All right, well, everyone, welcome and good morning to our next installment of our Virginia Museum of History and Culture Curator Conversation. My name is Elizabeth Darling, and I'm the Manager of Membership and Annual Giving here at the VMHC. And we are so glad to welcome you today. And before we get started, I'd just like to say another thank you in this season of Thanksgiving. As a special thank you to you, our members. We truly could not do what we do without your support, and we are especially grateful during these interesting times that we're all enjoying together at a distance. So thank you so much. And like I mentioned when people were logging on, if you have any issues with your Zoom, if you want to use the chat feature, and we'll attempt to help you with your issues. And then if you have questions for Paige during the program, you can also use the Q&A feature. And we will, so if you use the Q&A feature to ask your questions, we will get to those during the program. So without further ado on my end, it's my pleasure to introduce Paige Newman, our Curator Works curator, and she will be giving us a program today all about inner thoughts and the written word of our collection. So take it away, Paige. Thank you.
Thank you, Elizabeth. Before I get started, I also want to give a thank you to my colleague, Haley Fenner. She's the manager of digital learning, and she's going to be working her magic behind the scenes. She's going to be the one showing the slides. So I appreciate her help, and thank you, Elizabeth. So welcome to Dear Diary. Why do people feel compelled to write down their thoughts, hopes, and fears? A diary can be a space to share your true feelings, work through a problem, and record life experiences. The VMHC collection contains thousands of diaries written by Virginians, which provide unique insight into their everyday lives and private thoughts. So today we're going to take a peek at 5 diaries from around the mid-1800s to the 1930s. We're going to start with 2 diaries. Sisters Amanda Jane Cooley Roberts, who was born in 1820, and her sister Elizabeth Ann Cooley McClure, born in 1825. They were the daughters of Benjamin Cooley and Jane Dickey Cooley, and lived in Grayson and Carroll counties in Virginia. Amanda and Elizabeth were 2 of 11 children. Elizabeth's diary is featured on our conservation donation page. The diary has suffered severe water damage, and the ink on some of the pages is almost completely faded. So we're only able to show a few images of Elizabeth's diary, and that's McClure, if you can see on the screen now. But what I have in front of me is her sister Amanda Roberts' diary. There aren't, as I mentioned, there's not many slides of Elizabeth's diary. I found that we have, her sister's diary, and we believe it's made the same way, which might occur, and I'm going to be working some controls here too. You can see the diary has cloth, and this is what we believe Elizabeth's diary looked like too. Amanda's is cloth. You can see the condition is not so great. And it's sewn, it's bound. I don't know if you can even make that out, but it's fabric and sewn. So I'm gonna open the pages as we go through, if I remember to do so, just to give you an idea too of what you'll be seeing on the screen. So to give you a little background about Amanda and Elizabeth. Both were teachers, and in addition, they sewed, spun, and wove yarn and made fabric. And we believe that they made clothing and likely sold the goods too. A lot of the excerpts I'm going to read from the diary don't mention that, but just to give you a background. Elizabeth's diary records her aspirations to become a teacher and move west, and her eventual desire to marry. She starts her diary at 17 years old, living with her family. She writes about her marriage to James McClure, who was also a teacher, in 1846, and their immigration from Carroll County, Virginia to Independence, Missouri. Her diary includes an account of her journey from Virginia through Tennessee, Arkansas, and Louisiana to Missouri. Unfortunately, McClure died of fever at the age of 22. Her sister Amanda's diary, who we're looking the insert, her entries record her experiences as also a school teacher in Grayson and Carroll counties. She discusses life with her parents and expresses her resentment at having to teach, and records a growing sense of loneliness and despair, and expresses anxiety over her mental and physical state. She also died early, about 3 weeks after she married Logan Roberts. Just a FYI, both sisters, and it seems most of the family members, experienced health issues and were sickly, which is not that uncommon when it comes to, the mid-1840s. So the way I was thinking about this program, especially with Elizabeth and Amanda's diaries, and I hope it won't be confusing, but I thought it'd be interesting to read both of their entries, which were started on the same day, as you can tell from the date, and they go back and forth between Elizabeth and Amanda's diaries and to give their thoughts and reactions to the life events. And the images of the diary entries will be read, which I'll read, will be excerpts. So we're going to start with Elizabeth McClure's diary. This is her first entry of February 20th, 1842. And her entry mentions, I'm going to mention family names. So you don't need to know who these people are, but just a FYI. So Elizabeth starts, and actually, this is a great shot just to give you about why we need conservation on this diary. You can see it's torn. We don't have quite all of the entry of the diary. And you can see how it's worn, and then the edges, especially at the top. And the edges where you could probably see some holes, that's where it was sewn in. Okay, so Elizabeth starts out, Sunday, 12 o'clock, February the 20th, 1842. I shall endeavor to tell where and what all my family is and what they are doing, as near as I can. Martin, I suppose, to be roaming over the world, to and fro, I know not whither. Wynne is living in the Missouri Independence, Jackson City, Nancy about 10 miles from there, and Rebecca is living at the Crossroads, and Jesse is a candidate for the Kirk's Place. And AJC and JDC, two other siblings, and Julian is living here. James went to Worrell's this morning to take some Lindsay, and all the rest are at home. I have been reading some today. I have been going to school 2 weeks to ED. Not quite sure what ED means. Okay, if we move over to Amanda's, and she also begins February 20th, 1842. I am now about to commence a journal of some few particulars of my life, in order that I may be able to compare one day with another and see the difference in my feelings. This is Sunday morning. James has just started to Jesse Worrell's with some Lindsay for Jesse to sell for us. I intend reading today. I can spell, read, and write, but I know nothing of English grammar. I wish I only did understand that one important branch of learning, but I fear I never shall. So Amanda is 5 years older than Elizabeth, but I thought the two entries were, they're similar but very different. And as I read through their two different writing styles, you'll get a better idea of their personalities. So moving on, we're going to move on about 4 more years to 1846. Elizabeth and James McClure were married February 25th, 1846. So we're starting with Amanda's, because hers is earlier, March 1st. The wedding is now over at last. Monday at Grayson Court, James bought a little pony and gave $10 for him. I then rode him to the inn fair, which I believe is a fair, but they use inn fair. That's what I'm guessing. I was trying to do more research on that word, but we're going to go with that understanding for the moment. There were about 60 people at the wedding and about 50 at the inn fair. It was cold, cloudy weather and bad riding, but I hope no harm done. Quite a lively time. I enjoyed myself tolerably well all the time, but I was completely tired. Such a big wedding and so much to do. So Amanda goes on. I know not what to do with myself now. I feel more alone than ever now. But my expectation now is to get a school on Little Reed Island and stay there all summer, for I do not expect that they will make a school here at home, and I can hardly say that I wish it. Yet I do not know how I shall like to keep there, but I expect to try. I see no prospect of my getting married. I see many persons whom I respect, but few to love. Okay, so let's go to Elizabeth. And we don't have, we don't have Elizabeth's page for it. She writes on March 15th, and this is her experience of the wedding. Elizabeth writes, "The wedding is over, I am married. I can give utterance to my feelings. There is no language to describe the overflowing of my heart. The wedding day arrived. It was cold, chilly day, but not as cold as it had been before. Misted rain a little in the evening. I was busy all day fixing the house and clothes, always busy and active. In the evening, the bridegroom and his company, about 12 in number, came. It was all bustle and hurry then. I was not quite dressed. We got ready, and to my notion too, and marched downstairs, and stood before the priest in a house full of my best and dearest friends, and in the presence of the great and lawful God. Then we went to supper, and I must say that I enjoyed the evening well. Mick, her husband's name is James McClure, but she calls him Mick in her diary, and I talked and said we never had felt as we then did, to know that our childish glee was almost past, that we were married and had now to be our agents in all things, and probably would move away to Texas and leave all those gay young friends we loved so dear. But in the morning we concluded to buy land and stay and enjoy ourselves in this country a few years at least." So this was March 15th, as I said, 1846. They're talking about moving to Texas, but decided to stay a couple years in Carroll County and Grayson County. Well, that didn't really go as planned. So Amanda writes, this is April 9th, 1846. So her sister Elizabeth and James decided to just go ahead and move. They did not stay a couple years. Through the diary, they give some inclination. Maybe they want to get on the road and move west to start a school, at least teach. So Amanda writes, "Mick and Elizabeth are gone. They started since 9. We are all in a sad condition now. Many bitter drops have fallen from the eyes of this family this morning. Mother takes it very hard. Father went to the shop and did not see them start. Betsy kissed us all and said, 'God bless us.' Mick said but little, but seemed very full. I have not been seen to shed many tears. I have fortitude to bear almost anything for a short time till I can get away in some solitary place to cry. I went in the garden to the summer house, and there alone gave vent to my feelings, which at first was the most bitter, tearless anguish, better relieved by a flood of tears. But no one will know all that I feel. I know how lonesome and solitary everything will look. Oh, another burst of grief. Lord, give me fortitude to bear this great trial." Maybe you've noticed that Amanda seems to be a little more dramatic than Elizabeth in her diary entries. And this is how, so Elizabeth writes, April 11th, 1846, relaying that they're in Smith County, River Valley, waters of Holston. They're 55 miles from home. The 9th of April, we started towards Texas. Went to Grayson Courthouse, purchased feathers. From John Dixon's, we traveled to the face of Iron Mountain, about 16 miles. There took up camp for the first time in life, got supper, sung and prayed long, and then went to bed in the wagon. Slept some, felt awful strange, but contented with our lots. So to give you a little idea about Elizabeth and James McClure's journey, they used wagons and boats. And so they left Carroll County on April 9th, and made it to Memphis, Tennessee on May 13th. From Memphis, they made it to Harrison City, Texas, and then made it to Harrison City, Texas on May 29th, and from Harrison City to Independence, Missouri, they made it on June 24th. So that is some time to go. So we're going to move to the next slide, which is dated April 9th, 1847. This is Elizabeth, and she writes, and actually what's unique, which I thought was unique, is I hadn't seen, there's not many of that stamp right at the top, which is James McClure's stamp. it's mostly writing. Sometimes there's doodles and a lot of diaries, but Elizabeth didn't do much, nor did Amanda when it came to doodles or anything but writing. Elizabeth Stiss. Just 1 year since I left my father's house, now in Missouri, teaching school. It is Friday, and I am glad I don't have to teach anymore this week. I like to teach better than I thought I ever would. It is a fine practice. It improves my mind much. I long to see my old friends. I enjoy myself very well considering all things. So that was April 9th, 1847. The next slide, we're going to follow with Elizabeth a little bit. You'll see March 18th and March 29th. At the bottom of the March 18th, it is her husband McClure's handwriting. And he writes, Elizabeth sick of slow typhoid fever. Took 10 small doses of calomel and operate 4 times, which is 4 times, I guess, through the day, and gave her 40 drops of laudanum. He employed Dr. Godin. I think she is some better. God in heaven have mercy on her. Mick. But sadly, the next slide, on March 29th, the journal is done. The author being Elizabeth A. McClure, died March 28, 1848. Though happy in Christ Jesus, being the only consolation left me. She was 22 years, 7 months, and 12 days old. So that, unfortunately, ends Elizabeth's story. We're going to continue on to Amanda to see how she fared. So we're going to move to 1848. It's May 2nd, 1848. Alas for me, it seems as if I shall never see any more pleasure in this life. Those I love are continually departing to that eternity from whence there is no return. My heart is overflowing with grief. Poor Elizabeth is no more. We got a letter from McClure last Saturday which says she died the 28th of March. I will not attempt to describe my feelings when it is so much like mockery to try. I have always loved that sister tenderly and dearly. She was ever kind and good. I had commenced writing a letter to her and had not finished it when I heard the fatal news. I had fondly anticipated a happy meeting with her, which I can never enjoy in this life. My nearest and dearest friends are fast leaving me in this world of sorrow and disappointment. In 1 year and 4 days, I have lost a beloved father, brother, and sister. And oh, what will another year bring to me? Perhaps death. I cannot say that death would be unwelcome now. We are all alone. I feel that few can sympathize with me. I feel that if few more dear ones were taken away, existence would be blank with me. So to the next slide, and a couple more years later on Amanda's journey, I'm going to go to 1850. June 3rd is Amanda's birthday. And she writes, this is my birthday. I am now 30 and not married. What most people call an old maid. I do not want I shall ever marry. I see so many unhappy matches, it almost discourages me. So we're going to go to the next slide of Amanda's, which now we're moving to 1854, so 4 years later. So in this entry, Amanda mentions a man named Logan Roberts. Logan is first mentioned in 1852, but not very often in 1853. I'm guessing that they'd seen each other throughout 1853, but in the beginning of 1854, she expresses disappointment at not seeing or hearing from him. So Thursday, March 23rd, 1854, Saturday evening, Logan came, said he had intended nothing wrong, and made me believe it. He is to come again Sunday evening, and I expect to be married about the 1st of May. My thoughts are so busy, I know not what to be doing. I am taking a very important step, but hope I will be it will be for the better, and again find that I am not. So I'm not quite sure what she means by that. I don't know if through 1853, she is really sickly. A lot of her entries are mentioning her health and her family's health. So I don't know if that means that there's not much that she surprisingly revealed about Logan. And I don't know. There's a lot of questions, as there are with a lot of these diaries. So if we move to, let's see, I don't think we have a slide of this one. But April 30th, 1854, it's the last entry in Amanda's writing. And she says, I have so many things to think of, I do not know what to do. Wednesday we scoured and washed and Thursday ironed. Friday sewed my bonnet, red calico dress. She goes on to describe more of the activity of the house, which I'm guessing they're getting ready for her wedding. The page is torn on this April 30th, 1854, and you can see some of it in the May 20th entry where the page is torn. So if we move to the last slide, you'll notice that that is not Amanda's handwriting. It's her sister, Julia. And Julia writes, the writer of this journal is now no more. She died this morning at 8 o'clock. She died in full hope of inheriting a crown of glory. God grant her hopes may be realized, and I believe they will. So unfortunately, that ends Amanda's story too. But the fact that we have both Elizabeth and Amanda's diaries, I think it's just fascinating to be able to go back and forth to see how they experienced their life and then what they really brought to sort of what was important to them to note in their life, what made it notable, what activities, and those sort of things. So we're going to move on to a different diary. And this is what I love about diaries. Kind of what, as I was mentioning, what is important to people or what they, what stands out so they want to make note of. So this diary is of, her name is Henrietta Cattell Kurtz Selectman. We don't know much about Henrietta. All we know is that she started the diary in 1874 and it ended in 1898. So let's see. And obviously we think it says mother's diary here, so we're guessing that she did have children. She sort of kept sporadically a diary that records births, deaths, and marriages among the area's residents of Occoquan and sort of Woodbridge. And there's, she mentions the building and dedication of the Methodist, Baptist, and African American Baptist churches, some brief meetings, and then the members, like who joined her church. So the slide with the first entry is 1874. And as you can see, she's very to the point. December 22nd, Brother Chalk Kurtz was married. And then December 25th, Christmas, W.R. Selectman, my husband, gave me my silver teaspoons. They cost $10. And then she moves on to 1875. If you think about it, 1874, $10 is a lot of money. So I can understand that that is an important part of what you want to know. And she goes on to see 1875, January 1st, W.R. Selectman, again her husband, gave me my bracelets for New Year present. They cost $10. And then the next entry is 1876, again Christmas. Her husband gave her a set of knives and forks, and they cost $16. So the next entry is 1875, which it might be one of my favorites of a diary. I mean, excuse me, 1877. Sorry, Haley. The entries at the top, and obviously 1877 wasn't that notable for Henrietta. You can make out that it says not anything. In my mind, the next word is doing, but maybe not, or not anything down in 77. Not sure, but I hope it wasn't a bad year for Henrietta because I got a chuckle out of that. And after 1878 through 1898, she goes on to note the building of the iron bridge across Occoquan Creek in 1878. And then she doesn't really do much national news or makes note of that, but in 1881, she writes that President Garfield was shot, and then another note on September 19th when he died. The other entries include establishment of prohibition in Occoquan in 1892, and then the first telephone service between Occoquan and Woodbridge, which was installed in 1894. Most of this diary is blank. She ends, her last entry is May 26. It's Isaiah Davis. He moved over to Fairfax County on the old Marshall place. And that is the last entry from Henrietta from her diary. Just thought it was a nice compare and contrast to what Amanda and Elizabeth wrote. Okay, moving on. Do a little switch. So we're going to move on to Mary Custis Lee. Mary Custis was the eldest daughter of Robert E. Lee and Mary Ann Aranda Custis Lee. She was very close to her father. She never married, and she traveled the world in the United States after his death. Robert E. Lee died October of 1870. Mary Custis was on a steamer to England December of 1870. She would come back to the States periodically, but she pretty much traveled the world from 1870 to about 1917. She died in 1918. We call her the kind of family archivist. About a little over 10 years ago, Mary Custis had 2 trunks full of her papers and other materials that she collected through her travels. She had deposited those 2 trunks at Burke and Herbert Bank in Alexandria, Virginia, around, I don't know if it's the end of 1917 or the beginning of 1918, but so many years gone by. The family knew that the trunks were there, but over the years they had lost track of what was going on. So a little over 10, 12 years ago, another family member had contacted Burke and Herbert Bank, and they discovered the 2 trunks were indeed still there. And there was a bountiful of, primary source material from early Custis family from about 1698 up to ending with Mary Custis about 1917. A lot of the focus on this collection has been Robert E. Lee's, Confederate and military papers, but some of my favorite items from the collection are Mary Custis Lee's travel journals. And we have 2 pages here. Her writing is interesting, and this is actually a lot better than some of her other handwriting samples, but I just got a big kick out of this story. And this journal that you see now in front of you was kept while she was traveling in Australia, England, Spain, Germany, Greece, Italy, France, Egypt, along the Suez Canal, India, and in the Ottoman Empire, which is now Turkey. And what I like, if you can get into this, the top of her, and actually it's not on that page, Haley, sorry. But the top of the journal, which I did not take an image of, so I apologize. It says, "When in Turkey, do as the Turkeys do." So Mary Custis is definitely a formidable personality. She tells great stories, and it's just, yeah. You get to know her pretty well. So this diary covers 1877 to 1878. And this includes one of my favorite stories. It's about a hotel fire in her hotel room in Naples, Italy. And it occurred while Mary Custis was a guest. So I will start with her. It's about an 8-page entry, which I will not do that to you, but I'm going to start with just to give you the intro to how she describes it, and it gives you kind of an idea of her personality. So we'll start with, So Monday, July 8th. Monday, July 8th. Mary Custis writes, "How little we know what a day or rather a night may bring forth. I retired early last night expecting my summons for departure any moment and was consequently restless, waking up almost every hour, suffering too very much from my hands." I'm not quite sure what ailment she had with her hands though. and at 3 a.m. lit a candle to anoint them with the salve given me by the chemist. In about an hour, I approached the bed with it, meaning the candle, the lit candle, to hunt first for sandflies and then fleas, those wretched fleas. And the draft from the open window suddenly blew the mosquito netting across the flame. In a second, all was in a blaze. And I tried in vain first to drag it down and then to smother it with one of her shawls. Alas, alas. So the next page, Haley. I rang the bell a dozen times and then rushed out into the corridor, crying fire in tones that might have waked the dead. Happening to know that the proprietor's room was nearly opposite mine and seeing the door open, I flew in to rouse him, but he was not there. Though in a moment more he appeared from another direction, followed by the chambermaid. Instead of coming to the rescue, he rushed away, screaming like a woman. But she remained by me, meaning the chambermaid. And in a few moments more, there were people enough on the scene, the proprietor now among them. Fortunately, most of my belongings had been packed for departure and were downstairs in my trunk. Though in my distress of what I had done and what might ensue, I took no thought of what was in the room of my own. Some gentlemen, Americans of the cook party, though I had never even seen them before, brought me my watch, bracelets, and a roll of Napoleons, 500 or 600, and all that I had from the mantle, and one of them put a pair of slippers on my bare feet. So she goes on to describe more of the scene of that evening, and then her and how the proprietor was telling her how much it cost. She eventually gets a hold of her lawyer, and I think these gentlemen from the cook party actually, they might have spoken to the American embassy about this issue, but there's other papers besides this journal in the collection that it's with her lawyer, who eventually she deals with it. She pays for the damage done and a settlement. They work it out. But I don't know if she ever went back to this hotel, but it was such a story I hadn't seen in other diaries before that made that pretty entertaining and memorable. Okay, so we have, let's see, that was our fourth diary. And now we're going to go on to something a little different. I hope some of you are still with me. I haven't put you to sleep yet. So, as you can tell, it actually says travels abroad. This diary is, and you can see the image of Bradford Wasserman. He is 15 years old when he starts recording this diary. He records his experiences as assistant patrol leader of Boy Scout Troop 26 of Richmond, Virginia, while traveling to and from and attending the Fourth World Jamboree of Boy Scouts 1933 in Hungary. His travels start July 14th, and he returns back to the U.S. on September 1st. Entries describe his voyage to Europe, visits to London, England, Paris, France, Berlin, Dresden, Hamburg and Munich in Germany, Vienna, Austria, and Hungary, as well as activities at the Jamboree and then the return voyage to America. So I only chose 3 entries from Bradford's diary. You can kind of see, I don't know if you can do that. So he writes, this is his first day abroad, July 14th. He is leaving. So I left Richmond at 8:30. And I was wished goodbye by Daddy, Aunt Sarah, Uncle Manuel, Bubby, Getty, and Alvin. We arrived in Fredericksburg. From there, I had an enjoyable trip to Washington. Uncle Sam gave me $5 and lunch for Mother and me on the way. I went from there to New York. I agreed to meet Mother at her hotel. After much difficulty, I arrived at the hotel and found Mother waiting for me. We walked around a while. Then Mother went to the hotel with me. Then I went up and went to sleep. I arrived at New York at 11:30. The next entry is dated July 17th, 1933. And he is in voyage. He's on the boat. And he writes, I had breakfast, then I watched the waves. I got Nurse Parks to put a drop in my eye, and I showed him the letter and told him about it. I read in my cabin with both lights on, the door open and porthole 2 from 11 to 12. We have to wear blue neckerchiefs through Germany because that big sissy Hitler doesn't allow red to be worn. Tipped the waiter 10 cents, gave 10 cents towards prizes, had dinner, went on deck. I had supper. We are in a fog now. A foghorn is being blown about every minute. So the mention of Hitler. I chose this one and then the next entry just to give you an idea of what a 15-year-old's, opinion and what was going on at the time. Hitler had just been, he'd become Chancellor of Germany in January of 1933. So the last slide was April 22nd, and they're in Hamburg. We left Berlin at 10 o'clock and arrived in Hamburg 1:15. I went around shopping and I bought 2 airplanes for 2 marks. I bought a trick. I did not see many Nazis here. The ship is not so hot. There is a lot of Jews and Germans on board ship. I imagine they're glad to be out of Germany. I see a man with a yarmulke on now. I am getting sleepy. The meal is good. Everything is going along fine so far. So Wasserman does return back safely to Richmond. He ends up attending Virginia Tech and graduating. He does enter the army, during World War II and was discharged as a captain. And throughout his years, he owned 2 camera shops. There was Brad's Camera Shop downtown Richmond and then the Camera House in Hampton. But I just thought, there's obviously more entries here and you can read, but I just wanted to give us kind of an idea of what a 15-year-old thought of Hitler in 1933. So these are 5 examples of sort of the types of diaries we have in the collection. And I hope this gave you an idea of the importance of primary source material when it comes to research and getting different viewpoints about how history is experienced and how it's related and felt. And then hearing firsthand thoughts and concerns of past Virginians. So with this, getting close, about enough time for some Q&A, and I hope there are some questions. So I'm going to turn it over to Elizabeth, who'll be helping me with questions.
Yes, so if you have questions, please enter them in the Q&A feature of the Zoom, or if you're doing them in chat, you can do that as well. So Paige, thank you. Very interesting. We did have 2 questions come in for the most recent entry of for the diaries. So a question about Hitler not allowing the color red to be worn. So there's a question about if it was related to red being related to the Communist Party and that Hitler was very anti-communist. So do you think that's why red wasn't allowed? I
think that's why. I was trying to do more in-depth research on this and I wasn't coming up with much, and that's my understanding. I went on down a rabbit hole in another tangent where Hitler, he didn't like it if they were having an audience with Hitler, women could not wear red lipstick or have their nails painted. So there was, now I can't remember the makeup company, but in the United States, wearing red lipstick supposedly became very big during that time. So it was like female power. Because I think it was Rosie the Riveter, they were, using her as an example and during that time. But yeah, there was something with red that Hitler did not like. And I think it's close to that with the Communist Party.
That's interesting. I didn't know about the red lipstick. I'm gonna remember that. Oh, well, great. So we do have some more questions coming in. And again, listeners, if you have, and viewers, if you have questions, feel free to add them. We'll get to them if we have time. So we do have another one. This is a very good one. How does the museum come into possession of these diaries?
Thanks for asking. Actually, most of our materials are donated. I'd say about 90% of the items we have in our collection are through donations from members like you and from the general public. We do purchase some materials, but for the most part, they are donated. And this is why, if you're cleaning out your either your parents, your grandparents, or, other members of the family, please look at what's in there, because this is what comes out of the attic. Or, and I have to admit, some of these things, not anything here, I don't believe, where it was dug out of a trash can, but there have been items that have been donated, and it's boxes of materials just like this, and correspondence, like wills and land deeds and those types of things that we base our collection on as a personal papers repository. So yes, they're donated, and they're important because I stopped. We do have more 20th century and moving on to 21st century, but we need more mid-century, mid-20th century items, because everyone feels that old, if it's 1800s, then you probably want it. I mean, or even earlier, but history happens every day. We need to record it, and these are just examples of how we need to keep collecting and just be diligent about preserving our history.
Yes, and then we have a follow-up question to that is, how are the diaries cataloged by name? So is there a system for cataloging the diaries that come in?
Yes, we do. We use a combination of Cutler number and something that was made up by the VHS, established from the VHS. The Cutler number, let's see, Mary Custis Lee's, let's see, we'll use this one because I have it right in front of me. So diaries are typically, it's numerical and then alphabetical. Usually diaries, if the number starts with the MSS 51, I know that's a diary. MSS 5s or diaries. And then as it goes on, we can tell whether it's diary or what it contains. Personal diary, is there some other material? It goes on to MSS 3, 4, 5. That's the chronological. And then the next number would be W for Wasserman. And that's when the Cutter number comes in, which is really confusing still to me, and I've been trying to do it for 17 years. Depending on how it's WASSERMAN, and the numerical, the number this is MSS 51 W2848:1, which we know there's only one of these diaries. As for Mary Custis, since this came in with more materials, say correspondence and inventories. Hey, thank you. This is part of an MSS1 collection, which is a larger family collection. And it's MSS1 L5144, because that's where it sort of falls in. It's LEE. And then it just goes on. It starts at 1. I think there's close to 6,000 items in this collection, but in addition to Mary Custis, there were some enclosures with this diary, but I'm sure I confused you with that, but we know that, and what's up there, that's the catalog record, and you can go through, thank you, and there's the Mary Custis Lee. These are items that you can find in our catalog, but we use a combination of, numerical and alphabetical when it comes to cataloging.
Yeah, and what Haley is doing a great job on the screen is she's showing how to get there. So if you go to our main website, virginiahistory.org, and then at the top of the screen, you click Collections Catalog, it'll take you to the various catalogs that we have in our system. And so Paige, I believe that we have a lot digitized, but we certainly don't have everything in our collection digitized because we've got a lot.
No. We got a lot. Ideally, it would be great to have more, especially these one items, these diaries digitized, but staffing and digitizing, I don't know how many people know how time consuming that is, and not really the digitization, like the manual digitization of the object, but it's inputting all the data that is needed to make sure someone can get to that object. So it is inputting and, making sure we have names, places they traveled, the dates, other, specific information that makes it easy to get the person through our website to the material.
And then we have a couple more specific questions. So one is for the most recent diary you shared with us. This is from a member. Did I see the attempted entry that Hitler was insane scribbled in the text?
Oh, which page was that?
I think it was where he was talking about the red scarf in the
Oh,
image
okay.
that Haley was sharing. There was an additional line that said something Hitler is, and then it was a little scribbled. I'm not sure what that word is. It definitely starts with an I.
Oh, yeah, that is oh my gosh, on the description, I believe that's a Jewish word for, let's see. I believe it is a Jewish word and probably means insane. I meant to note that. My apologies. Oh, no, it's Pig Latin, I think. Wasserman uses Pig Latin, so it's UTSNA. And that means nuts. It means nuts in Pig Latin.
Oh, okay. So for anyone who doesn't know Pig Latin, you take the first consonant sound of the word, and then you move it to the end of the word, and then you add an A to the end. So upsnay is actually nuts. Oh my gosh. Okay.
Yes. So thank you. I meant to point that out. And that just kind of, that gives it more like a 15-year-old using Pig Latin, which makes sense.
Well, I still use Pig Latin occasionally.
Yeah.
Oh, that's great. And then we do have another question specifically for the Lee Custis diaries. Did Miss Lee have a traveling companion on her trip?
Yeah, she did for the most part. Either they were with her or she would meet them. Well, from what I can tell, Robert E. Lee, he invested very well in railroads, and this is what allowed Mary Custis to travel for so long and to so many places. So she did, not all the time. She was typically trying to get her siblings to come meet her. But for the most part, she did have traveling companions, or she was usually staying with a lot of English nobility throughout her travels. So she had a lot of contacts, yes. Nice. But she typically did. She'll mention other people in her, either in her journal or correspondence. Yeah.
Okay, and it looks like we do have one final question, just a final call if there are any more questions out there. I'm sure to add them in. And then there was a clarification question. Did you say these diaries are available for viewing at the VMHC website on the computer?
Not in full. In fact, no. There's on our website, you probably can find it fast if you go to the site and just type in diaries, in the overall site. There are a few images of Wasserman's diary, and I believe there are a few images, maybe just Wasserman's diary. Nothing else. Lee's, that is, I feel, Blackford diary. Yes, that's Sarah Evelyn Blackford. That is, I forget whose diary that is. It's at the bottom there. And actually, the fan one is the Civil War, it's an ivory weekly diary, I believe. And see how small it is. So you would write in pencil and then you erase it.
Oh, wow.
So I don't know if that's more of a memory book for the week or what, but that's an unusual one. But no, a lot of them are not digitized. Again, it's time consuming, and we hope to do more in the future.
And we do have, I will add that for the McClure diary, at least, we do have a link to, I believe it's the is it the Kansas Historical Society, that they
Oh,
have,
good. Okay.
they have, it's not complete, but it is a pretty expansive transcript of the Elizabeth McClure's diary. And that, I believe, is linked on our website. So again, in that collection,
Oh,
so
good.
if you search on McClure diary. So it's not hosted on our website, but it is linked to, it's either Kansas or Kentucky. So it's about, I would say it's the majority of her diary typed out, but not all of it. So, and it looks like that is the end of the questions.
Yeah, I want to add one thing about the transcript. Sorry, this is Haley here, educator.
Oh, yes, please, education.
Yeah. So we do have a sort of short transcript, a selection of the entries from Elizabeth's diary on our website in our Learn portal, because it is a resource we use with students when we talk about westward expansion. So I'm going to go ahead and drop a link into our chat where you guys can access that that sort of upload that gives you a little bit of the transcript.
Oh, great. Thank you.
Thank you.
And I will also say, if any of our members who are watching, if you have a specific question about diaries, you can always, of course, reach out to us, and Paige can also hopefully answer at least some of the questions or point you in the right direction. And as Paige said, we are, of course, always interested in accepting more recent donations of journals and diaries that you may have kicking around your house. So even if you don't want them, we might want them.
We do. Yeah, we might want them. Yes. Yes.
All right. Well, I think that we're all done with the questions. So before we let y'all go, thank you so much, Paige and Haley, for being here today. And thank you to our members so much for tuning in. Like I said at the beginning, we're so appreciative of your support, and we hope that we will see you at our next Curator conversation that will be on February 8th. So that's in 2021. Hard to believe that we're almost there. And we do also have other programming that is detailed on our website. I know we've got another Curators at Work, which is a program with our curators, but is open to the public. And that will be, I believe, December, which is tomorrow. Tomorrow starts December, so it'll be coming up. And all that information can be found on our website. So if there aren't any more questions, thank you all so much for tuning in, and we'll see you at the next one.
Thank you. Stay safe.